By introducing Mariam. Mariam is an engineer by training and an educational scholar who's actively involved in researching questions of perceptions about the ethos of the study of engineering across cultural boundaries. She is speaking to us from Cairo. I'd like to hand the meeting over to her.
Thank you, Jane. That's really sweet.
Take it away.
Hello, everybody. How are you? My name is Mariam. I'm calling in from Cairo. And just like Jane said, I originally trained as an engineer in my undergraduate and postgraduate studies, but then I shifted careers to do a PhD in education because I was interested in questions of the quality education that our engineers in Egypt receive. So I'm currently based in the School of Engineering at New Giza University. And I wanted to share with you a little bit today about, some of the thoughts I've been having about the quality of our education, what we're offering to students, how we monitor and evaluate our schooling experience, and some challenges I've been facing. I was just telling Jane earlier, just before the meeting started, that I very much believe in the idea of collective intelligence in a room. And so if we were to assume that we're in this virtual room together, I do believe very much in the power of a lot of people thinking together. So I'll be sharing some thoughts that I'm having, but the thing I'm really excited about is listening to all of your thoughts about, the topic that I've chosen. So in order for me to be, familiarize myself a little bit more with the group, I'm sure some of you already know each other. I was wondering if each of you wants to do a very quick introduction about, who you are, what are the things you're interested in, what your focus is in monitoring evaluation, so that this can help me orient myself as I talk, and also so that we can make the best use of the productive struggle that we're going to go through as we think of some challenges in quality. So according to the list I have here, I think it's in alphabetical order. The first person that comes up is AM. Or maybe CAO, control engine.
I think CAO stands for Cambridge Advanced Online, and I guess it's their account I'm using. So I'm Jan Maciejowski. I am a recently retired professor of control engineering at Cambridge University, and I've recently developed an online course for continuing education of graduate engineers who want to find out about control.
That's really interesting. I studied at Cambridge as well. So it's really interesting. We have a connection there. And then Derek?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Do you want to? Yeah.
Okay. I'm a retired professor from the University of Sussex. I know Jan very well. I first started teaching in 1957 and I finished about 2015, so I did a long stint. And like Jan, I taught control engineering basically after obtaining a degree in electrical engineering.
Thank you, Derek. Very nice to meet you. Then we have Jane. I already know Jane. Jane, do you want to say a couple of words?
Yeah, I work at the Institute. I'm membership development manager, so I'm helping to grow membership. And I organise events as well.
Nice to meet you, Jane. Then we have Jessica.
Hi, I'm Jessica. I'm one of the new registration officers at the Institute. And so I thought it'd be an interesting place for me to come along to, because I'll be going on accreditation visits in the future in higher education. So I thought this could be interesting. Thank you.
Nice to meet you, Jessica. Zhao?
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Hi. I work for SCORE Group in Peterhead. I'm a IMC apprentice and just came along as well because I want to learn as much as possible about everything, really. So just out of curiosity. Thank you.
Nice to meet you. And then we have Marx.
Yes,
Jared.
hello. My name is Jared Marx.
Maybe your
Okay,
first
I'm
Jared,
professor.
sorry, yeah.
I'm professor in Hertwald University, and I teach both chemical engineers, okay, and accredited apprentices in industry, okay, control and instrumentation.
Nice to meet you. Next, we have Clifford Mayhew. Sorry, English is not my first language, so I'm very bad with pronouncing names.
No, that's spot on. That's my name. Yeah, I work for John Moores University, and I run the electrical electronic programs there. My field is automation.
Very nice to meet you. Automation is the future, so very nice to meet you. Richard Gordon.
Hello, my name's Richard Gordon. I've retired 20 years, but I'm still learning. And I worked for ICI and then BP, and graduated from Heriot Watt many moons ago. Now I'm interested in how my grandchildren are being educated.
Nice to meet you, Richard. And finally, last but not least, we have Ryan. Okay, maybe his microphone is not working. Let me start. Oh, okay. Yeah, let me start sharing my screen, and I'll tell you a little bit of the thoughts I was having as I was preparing the talk. So I titled the talk Quality in Higher Education, Perspectives from Stakeholders, and it's really lovely to see a lot of people from the higher ed sector who also have a background in engineering joining us today, because really I'll be sharing some of the challenges I've been having. After graduating from the Faculty of Education at Cambridge University, I was assigned the role as quality unit lead at the School of Engineering at New Visa University. Now, being assigned that role meant that I was responsible for ensuring a quality education for the students that we have. We currently have 2 cohorts of undergraduate students, and they're studying in 2 fields, electronics engineering and architectural engineering. And starting next year, we're going to be also having mechanical engineering. So I realized soon enough that quality meant multiple stakeholders getting involved, and that ensuring quality of an educational process was much more complex than ensuring quality in a manufacturing site or with things that involve machines, because as you're working with people, it becomes much more complicated. So I thought I'd offer you some of the perspectives from different stakeholders that I've seen so far, and maybe discuss some of the challenges I've been having and listen to your ideas about how to resolve these. I was just telling Jane, my thoughts were that, you know, we make this an interactive discussion. So I don't have all the answers, and I'm just putting out some of the challenges that I think a lot of you might relate to. And that maybe we can make this more of a discussion where we can all share our experiences together. So let's hope this works. Oh, here we go. So why is measurement and control important? Why is it important to measure and control the outcomes of an academic experience? Or why is it important to measure and control for quality in an academic setting? What would be your ideas? So just feel free to unmute and share some of the ideas you have, why it's important to measure and control for the outcomes in an academic experience. Okay, I'll go for one reason. I think because what is not measured, if there's something that you can't measure, you can't make sure that that it's done correctly. So once you start measuring it, you can know where it stands on a scale. So this is one reason, for instance. The other reason is because we are responsible towards the students to offer them the best quality possible. Because if we don't control for certain things, we will never know if a persisting mistake is happening and it's not being resolved. Also, the trouble I've seen with the higher ed sector is that it's a sector that involves multiple generations. And so across these generations, there are things that are not common sense to everybody. And so as you start measuring these things, you discover generational differences that you can control for if you want to make sure that you're reaching out to these, especially the undergraduates, in a way that is suitable for them. So there are different thoughts that I had why measurement and control is important. And then the next thing is the context of measurement and control. So far, I've been always involved in the industry, measurement and control as part of the industry. And I've recently moved to measurement and control in academia or in a learning setting. And does it really matter? Does it matter? Is there a difference between measuring and controlling in the industry or measuring and controlling in an academic setting? What would your thoughts be? I'm not very sure if I... Oh yeah, here we go.
Well,
someone is going to share. Yeah.
There is certainly a difference because what you are trying to assess is so multidimensional.
Yes.
There are very many different aspects, you know, apart from the ones you mentioned, there are also things like you are also reporting on, in some sense, the quality of the student, for example. So, you know, in other words, a future employer wants to know how smart these people are. And of course, in the industrial setting, we're measuring and trying to attain a narrower set of goals. You know, we're trying to see whether a particular performance of an amplifier is okay. But when you're trying to do the same for people, it's an order of magnitude less well defined.
Yes, thank you so much, because this is spot on. The main challenge that I've been facing is people are much more complex than things. And with people, you hold a much bigger responsibility than with things. So if, you know, you're designing, I don't know, an amplifier, as you said, or a washing machine or whatever it is, and it goes wrong, that's not okay. But the only loss you have is loss on money, loss on resources. You don't have loss on souls, on people. Whereas in academia, you're building people and you are accountable against the industry for raising people of a certain caliber. And so it becomes much more complicated, just as much as a human being is multifaceted, as you said, and much more complex than the industry. And this is why I felt that as we stand now, in as much as I've read, obviously I haven't read everything, but as we stand now, the measurement and control vehicles that exist for the industrial context are too similar to the measurement and control vehicles that exist in the academic setting, to the extent that I'm wondering, you know, how is it possible? Is it possible to measure and control using the same mindset that we use for industrial purposes in a setting where you're mostly dealing with people? Is it fair? Is it fair to these people in this setting? And is it well studied enough? Do we have enough evidence that this gets us the best outcomes? So these are some of the struggles I've been having and the things I've been thinking about in the past 2 years. And so I thought to start with what we need is a holistic approach. It's not enough to say, okay, we're going to make sure that the faculty members are well trained, that they receive enough training. We're going to make sure, I don't know, that the rooms are clean. We're going to make sure that the facilities are available for them to, I don't know, do physics experiments. It's not enough to focus on one aspect. It needs to be a holistic, well-rounded approach that not only looks at all of these aspects, but that also intertwines them together. So only if we have this holistic approach can we really match our outputs against the well-defined outcomes that we have. Now, it's out of scope of this presentation to talk in detail about the outcomes that we have for our particular school. It's a little bit confidential because some of them relate to the policies at our school, and it's also a little bit out of scope to talk particularly about the outcomes and how we match them against the outputs. But many of you come already from an academic experience background, and you probably know they're very common. There is a lot in common in terms of the outcomes from an academic experience. But my main point was the holistic approach, that we need a holistic approach that goes beyond the instructional capacity, that goes beyond just looking at how well equipped the faculty members are. It needs to be an interwoven approach that weaves together multiple threads, so that weaves together the classroom infrastructure, with the facilities, with the people, with the mental health of students, with the well-being of the faculty members. It needs to be an integrated approach that is integrated into our everyday lives. It can't just be a tick box that we tick. Oh, so, okay, so we've talked about the fire drills. Let's now move with the rest of our day. It needs to be integrated in the way we think about everything that we do at the school. And it needs to be something that is handy and easy to use, because those of you who have been in academia know how complicated our life can get, how many balls we have to juggle at the same time. And so it has to be something that is handy and easy to use. So these were my 4 strands, so to say, when I was thinking of an approach for quality evaluation. And so I came to put out 8 strands that so far, I've been working on this for 2 years. These are the 8 strands that I think are, in a sense, interwoven and can be integrated in our day-to-day work, and that reflect academic excellence as opposed to the excellence of an industry space. So first of all, it's the strategy and planning. Do we have a clear strategy, and does this strategy reflect into a roadmap? And do we plan in the steps towards this roadmap? So do we have a strategy of networking with other faculties around us? Do we have a strategy of expansion? Do we have a strategy of growth? Do we plan for it? And do we integrate these plans into our day-to-day activities? So this was one thing I thought that was really important to include for quality assurance. The second thing was leadership and administration. Is the leadership equipped to lead a team of faculty members and assistants and students? And are there enough activities that showcase this team spirit between the members? And do we have enough administrative support for the leaders? Because so far, what I've seen is that most of the administrative roles are done as kind of a side job by some of the faculty members. So you would assign an administrative role to one of your PhD students, for instance, as alongside your thesis. Maybe you can, I don't know, draw the posters for our events, or alongside, you know, your duties, maybe you can organize the seminars for us. And as long as the administrative stuff, or you can order the coffee or whatever, as long as the administrative stuff is not assigned to an administrator, it's always done based on favors. And I've seen that this was not sustainable. And so do we have a leadership team that is backed well enough by an administrative team to make sure that this can work? Then we have the faculty membership and the faculty assistants. Do we have membership of faculty members that have a sense of ownership towards the place, that buy into the larger strategy, and that together with the assistance team can fulfill this role? Continuous development, of course, and management. So are we not just recruiting the people that have this sense of ownership, but are we working on developing them continuously? Now, on this side, you have kind of what happens behind the scenes, what the things that the students do not see per se, but if they're missing, the students notice that something is missing. So these you have, you know, these 4 things I thought were the things that are happening behind the curtains or behind the scenes. Now, at the front of things is the teaching and learning excellence. We are now living in a world where you can't just lecture at students. You have to engage them. It has to be facilitated. It has to be hands-on. You have to engage them in projects. You have to do integrated learning. And this teaching and learning excellence is something that they deserve, that our students deserve, because they are living in a very complex world out there, and because the job offerings that are out there are really complex. So are we offering them this level of teaching, learning excellence? Do we offer them student support and mentorship? Is there a system that ensures students are well supported mentally and psychologically and even physically? And do we offer them one-to-one mentorship to ensure that this is happening? Do we offer them scientific activities that they can engage in? So let's say we do one science exhibition per day or per year or something like that, activities where the students can engage and see in real time that there is an impact to what they're studying. And finally, the community responsibility. So it's not enough for us to exist behind and in front of the scenes just between the faculty members and the students. It's important that we reach out to the community around us with what we're doing. So these are kind of the 8 things that over the last 2 years I thought made sense in an academic setting, and that I now have kind of introduced as standards for quality assurance in an academic setting. I think they don't just exist as standalone strands. I think that they very much can be interrelated to each other. And so this leads us to, you know, how can we look at these as interwoven, as integrated? And I realized that strategy and planning is very, very neatly connected to the membership and assistance, to the faculty membership and assistance. Because if you plan for something correctly, and if you have a good strategy, you need to involve the members in this strategy making so that they have a sense of ownership, so that they know where we're going. And if these are interwoven with each other, naturally, we know how to engage with the community, because now the whole institution becomes a team in itself that can reach out to the community and make a difference. Also, when the leadership and administration is, you know, well supporting the faculty members, you can ensure teaching and learning excellence. And out of these teaching and learning excellence, you can ensure that the scientific activities that take place are very, you know, engaging to the students, but also very much aligned to the 21st century skills. So when you look at these connections, you see that these are strands that don't just exist as standalone strands. They are strands that exist in correlation to each other. I could give other examples about how these strands are interwoven or interrelated, but I think more or less you're getting the point of what I'm trying to say. And so my idea was, I want to establish connections. I want to establish connections. It's not enough that I've identified these strands. I want to establish connections between these strands to make sure that not just people buy into them, but that they are connected with each other and that they are easy to use, that they flow into each other, that when we establish one, we ensure that the other is naturally also going well. And so the business model I've adopted is that from the research flows the scientific activities that are done by the membership and assistance, and then the community engagement can be well informed. Now, this is the point where I want to stop and have a discussion, because I faced some challenges when I've done that. Firstly, there were cultural challenges, because some of the stakeholders just weren't buying into this idea. They didn't know why we needed to do this and how it would matter. They thought it was just going to waste some time. There was a general culture that things have been well all these years. Why do we need to, you know, define strands and have these standards and waste all our time on doing this? It was perceived as, you know, an additional burden, a waste of time. It wasn't seen as necessary. The motto was, we're already doing it. Why do we need to define it? So there was a cultural barrier to that. And I don't know if some of you might relate to that cultural barrier. And if so, how, what you would advise about it. And then secondly, there was the societal barriers. Because people have existed in silos for so long that you would get statements like, you know, this is my classroom. That's what I do with my students. Why are you trying to figure out what I'm doing with my students? There is a general sense of ownership of your own research cluster, of your own classroom, of things like that, that people weren't easily buying into the idea of, you know, that teaching and learning excellence was a collective aim that we were aiming for, that, you know, community engagement was a collective aim that we were aiming for. Instead, there was a societal hurdle because people were very individualistically bound to what they were already doing. And also, I don't know if you've experienced similar things, and if so, I'd love to hear them and see how you have dealt with these challenges. And then there were political challenges, because I'm operating in a very patriarchal society. Being a woman and being someone who's younger in age, people wouldn't listen. They wouldn't listen to these ideas. They, you know, they would dismiss them because they would think, you know, what would she know? And so somehow politically, I felt that the power dynamic was not in my favor. And sometimes when I would say my same ideas to someone who was a male and who was older than me, and he would bring these ideas across to the team, I would find much more buy-in than when I would say them. And so these were also challenges that I've had to deal with, and I don't know if you had something similar, but these also were challenges that I was faced with. And so maybe I wanted to hear from you. Maybe we can stop here for 5 minutes and see if other people had similar challenges, and then I can share with you a little bit how I found some strategies to overcome them, but I'm not there yet. So I'd love to hear more from you, what you think of these challenges and if you faced similar ones.
Hello, it's Derek here. All right for me to carry on speaking? Okay. I think the point I would like to make is it's very difficult to talk about these things in general. It depends upon the specific situation and the organization of the university and things like that, if you're talking about the university situations. I've been in ones where starting off, when I started as a young man at Manchester, the only person who was in charge basically was the professor. We only had one professor those days. And I found that if you could get on with the professor, as I think most people did, things went reasonably well. And it's the leadership that you have in front of you that should discuss what's best for that situation. If you talk about Jan's situation at Cambridge, where I think he's talking about his postgraduate course, he's got basically, I would say, autonomy for that. So it's up to Jan as the organizer of that to think about these things and how he gets the best out of people. Now, in my background with respect to ladies at university, is we've had great difficulty in encouraging them to join and stay with the faculty, even though we've bent over backwards, let's put it that way. If we had 2 people for an appointment, the lady had a head start in the sense that we wanted to see more ladies come into the profession and so on. So I think we always listen to them. I'm rather surprised at your situation, but it all depends upon the backgrounds and things like this. And it's not easy to generalize at all in these things. But the points you are making, people should be considering in their working environment. I think that's all I can say in a general sort of way.
Yeah, no, thank you, Derek. That's really precious. Yeah, I agree. I need to offer much more context so that we can discuss it in detail. But as a general point, I think it's the buy-in, that people need to buy into the idea that quality is everybody's business. It's not just the business of the quality officer. It's something that everybody needs to be engaged in, because the impact of a good quality system is something that's going to reflect on everybody. And so everybody needs to somehow be involved in it. I agree.
Yeah, can I just come back on this quality? The measurement can be used for 2 things. Say typically for just evaluating something as a quality, if you want, just as a measurement. But you can also use your measurement with your control. And there's something to be said, what happened at many universities in the States, where they used to give tests occasionally. And the results of that were that if you gave a test mid-term, it might help you to modify your teaching. In other words, that brings the control. That means measurement is then used for control in an academic sense. That if you get these measurements and find that things are not, and questionnaires are good for this, but I found that the problem with questionnaires at most universities is students can send them in anonymously. So if a student says he's having difficulty with something, you don't know why. Nor do you know, in fact, if he attended all the lectures. I think one of the things about teaching engineering, science and mathematics is it's very difficult to follow if you don't go to all the lectures. I used to ask many students at the start of the lecture, what did I talk to you about last lecture? And it's surprising how few could tell me. And this is a problem, I think, in teaching engineering, that students do have to understand what's been taught to them previously to understand what you're going to tell them today, so to speak.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I think one of the things I've learned, especially with surveys, I never take a survey after they've had the test. Because then, you know, they're angry that they did bad at the test, or after they have the test results. Because then, you know, they're angry at the professor because, you know, he gave them a C or whatever. And so they go in and they write, you know, all these horrible things in the survey. And you can tell it's their emotions, you know, their emotions are all over the place because they got bad on the test. And so these are some things I had to learn with surveying, that what I do now is I attach a qualitative. So surveys are usually very quantitative because you tell them, you know, on a scale from 1 to 5, whatever, and then you ask a question. And so if he gives you a 3 or whatever, there's nothing I can do with this number because I really don't know why you gave me a 3. Was it, you know, are you?
No, exactly.
And so, yeah, so now I've added like a mini essay that they have to write. And they have to explain, you know, so, you know, give me the numbers and then write a paragraph about why you've evaluated this experience in this way. And I told them, you know, if you don't write this paragraph, I'm not going to look at your numbers, because for me, numbers don't mean anything if they don't come accompanied with a text, because I am not you and I don't know what you were thinking when you gave these numbers, and it's very subjective. You could be thinking of anything. And so, yes, I agree with you that surveys, it's a question of when you introduce them, how you introduce them, qualitatively or quantitatively, how you make sure that you really get what they're trying to tell you from the survey. So, yeah, I agree with you very much on that. Yeah. Are there any other thoughts?
If you don't mind me speaking again, I just like the general point that I think the kind of framework you have set out is a necessary condition for quality, but it's not sufficient. And I think this is generally true of things like the ISO standards, you know, for quality, for safety, and so on. You can set them up, and they help you, but they don't in themselves ensure that you get high quality. And that very much depends on what you're saying, the culture inside the organization. I guess in the UK, we are probably lucky in that I would imagine that pretty much all UK universities have got those elements which you described. But how seriously they take them is another question. You know, so in some cases it's tick boxing, and in some cases, in the cases of good places, everybody through the organization, or the majority of people in the organization, buy into it. So, and that's a very difficult one to deal with. Except ultimately, it's depends on this very vague thing that you rely on having good people to implement the system.
Yeah, I think that was the point that Derek was trying to make as well, that, you know, it's the people that are with you that create this culture. And if you have people who have this buy-in, then we're doing this together as a team. If you don't have this, then it becomes this annoying tick boxing person who's after you just to tick the box of, you know, did you fill out the survey? Did you do this? Did you do that? And then it loses its point. And that's kind of a little bit the struggle I was in towards, you know, I've been doing this for 2 years now, so towards the end of the first year. So let me show you a little bit how things evolved. Oh, here we go. So we were here. Can you see my slides again? Okay, so how I thought of resolving this is, so we said that, you know, we had 3 problems: cultural, societal, and political. And so how I said to resolve this was, for cultural, it's an opportunity to build sustained networks. So why don't we introduce each other to this new culture of quality and have a sustained network of people who buy into this idea? And from a societal point of view, because we said societally the trouble was individualism, that people, were grasping, were thinking my classroom belongs to me, and why do you want to now go in and try to figure out what I'm doing? So I thought it's an opportunity to give people the freedom to explore other opportunities that could mean, an improved quality for everybody. And politically, it's the idea of raising awareness. I had so many awareness raising sessions, one-to-one discussions informally with people to kind of raise awareness that it's not me being an annoying person, it's that this is going to be in the best interest of everybody, and it should be everybody's interest to do that. So my target was group buy-in. I wanted that the idea behind quality measurement be bought in by everybody, and to kind of change the existing malperception that this was just a tick boxing exercise, and to try to introduce the idea that this was something we were working on together as a team. Now, my larger target was expansion, was that other departments would be seeing what we're doing, and in a sense, we would be this lighthouse that other people could watch and want to do the same. And also my target was outreach, so that this idea would be something that we can reach out to for a larger audience and see other places outside of our university doing the same thing. So these were kind of the small targets and the larger targets that I had in my mind. Now, if we look at the landscape, I chose to define it as, two extremes of people who are fully unwilling to do that, to help, to engage in any of that, and then people who are very willing to do it. And then you have people who are inconvenienced by it, and other people who find it very convenient to do that. And so for experienced faculty members, people who have been there for a very long time, it's convenient for them. They know the academic things. They know their job well enough that they have enough time to do it, but they're fully unwilling to do it. They don't think there is a point to do it. We've done it like this for I don't know how many years. We don't want to change it now. Why should we be doing that? Less experienced faculty members, so people who finished their PhDs, let's say 4 or 5 years ago, not just were they unwilling to do it because they didn't see a point. Yeah, so less experienced faculty members were not just unwilling to do it, they found it inconvenient. Administrators were willing to do it, but because it was kind of their job, so they were less unwilling to do it. They found it, again, very inconvenient because they already have so many things on their plate, so why should we add another thing? Assistants were willing to do it because for them it was something new. You could put it on their portfolio. They could, write on their portfolio that they've been involved in something like this. So they were willing to do it. They were younger and they wanted to see the faculty becoming a nicer place. They just thought it was too inconvenient because other things took precedence. So finishing their masters or finishing, I don't know, a study they've been working on or a paper they're working on was more important. Students, surprisingly, were very open to the idea. They were very willing. It was a little bit inconveniencing to them, but they were very willing. And it's really hurtful to see how students want to see the place a better place, and it's the faculty members that are pulling you back. So this has been another challenge that I've been having. And so in terms of growth, how I want to scale in the future, I want to involve the parties for whom it's inconvenient first. So if we look at willing, unwilling versus convenient, inconvenient, I thought solving the convenience problem is easier than solving the willingness problem. So I thought if I get the people who are willing to do it, but are inconvenienced by it on board, I can have more people on board. And then together we can start raising awareness to the parties that are totally unwilling, so that we can create a success story to achieve further buy-in in the future. And so the 2-year action plan that I've been working on is, I've laid out an overall plan. I've looked at the different tools that match against the outcomes. I've run focus groups, and in July, we launched a pilot for these 12 standards. I'm gathering currently feedback, and my idea is that eventually we will have a success story that we can tell by the end of 2023, so that people who are unwilling to do it can see that this is actually achieving real-time change. So in summary, At the quality unit, my target is to develop practical tools for monitoring and evaluation that match with the shared expected outcomes. The challenge is to achieve local buy-in, and I've laid a roadmap to accomplish this. Thank you very much for listening. This is my email address. I've also added it to all of the slides in case you want to reach out and discuss more. I'm sure that many of you I'd love to stay in touch with, because I love to learn from your experiences as well. And yeah, these were the thoughts that I had.